What's up, everybody? Welcome to AAPI in Gaming. This is the AAPI in Games Media Panel. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Danreb Victorio. I am a staffer with AAPI in Gaming. And yeah, if this is your first time joining us for an AAPI in Gaming event, welcome. And we really hope you enjoy the discussions we'll be having today. So before we start, I want to talk about what AAPI in Gaming does as a community. First and foremost, we're a community platform that amplifies the voices of the Asian American and Pacific Islander diaspora in the gaming industry. We promote cultural appreciation and highlight representation in games and content relating to games. As an inclusive organization, we offer career counseling, recommendations of AAPI video games on platforms such as Steam, as well as an AAPI video game directory inclusive of all games on all platforms. If any of this sounds interesting to you, we invite you to join our Discord, which you'll find via the link in the description. So why are we here? We're at the tail end of AAPI Heritage Month, and we've already enjoyed a few events already this month, including an AAPI Steam sale during May 1st through the 10th, a community call for members of our mental health chapter, the Inner Lantern, on the 16th, as well as an AAPI Heritage Month Game Jam crossover with Logitech. We even had a fireside chat a few days ago featuring voices from Blizzard, Activision, Riot, and Obsidian, along with other roundtable discussion called for by Children of Immigrants. So yeah, a lot of stuff that we've had, and I've been a part of this organization for about 2 years, and we've never really done anything related to games media, and that's something that I definitely wanted to have done. So I brought a lot of awesome guests today. I was talking to them earlier. I was saying that, all right, I look up to each and every one of you, and I am really nervous and feeling like, all right, I don't really belong in this conversation, but yeah, let's go ahead and do it anyway. So yeah, I just want to go ahead and introduce everybody. So first we have Krysta Yang. I'll take a minute to introduce this jump up superstar. You know, I love that song sometimes. But as somebody that's been a fan of Nintendo Minute since its inception, if there's anything I've learned from Krysta, it's that a minute is never a minute. And after leaving Nintendo of America in 2022, Krysta started the Kit and Krysta podcast alongside her longtime colleague Kit Ellis, whom she also co-founded Never a Minute Studios. So Krysta, let's go ahead and we'll give you the floor to talk about yourself and your journey.
Yeah, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here with all the rest of these amazing people. So looking forward to the discussion today. But yeah, I was at Nintendo of America working in marketing for over 13 years, left the company in 2022 and started independent content creation along with a marketing agency that really aims to help indie developers. So taking that skill set from a big, AAA place like Nintendo and bringing that experience to indie games is sort of a big passion of mine. So that's been what I've been up to for the last 4 years since leaving Nintendo. And it's been an amazing journey. And I've been so fortunate to meet so many inspirational people along the way and learn so much. And it's been wonderful.
Thanks so much. And like, again, big fan of everything you do. Like you can see
Thank you.
of your background there, but like I also have one of these. It's one of my most cherished.
Aw.
So
It's
yeah,
right there.
That's
have an
so
awesome,
cute.
Thank you.
awesome. Yeah, it's just a custom controller that I got during my first PAX West. So that was really cool meeting
Thank
you
you.
and it. So yeah, from my TV and my screen onto everyone else's screen, it's pretty cool. It's happened. All right, next up we have Stella Chung.
Ooh.
If I had to point out somebody who's truly a badass, it's Stella, the
Aw.
IGN alum known throughout the internet as, is it Paralla? Paralla? How do you say it?
So it's Parallax Stella.
Paralla.
Yeah.
I thought it was an actual thing. All right, cool. it's as Parallax Stella is a host, esports commentator, and video game consultant. In addition to the Snap Aim podcast, you might have noticed Stella as one of the co-hosts of the DICE Awards, which has been doing awesome ever since she's been doing it. It's not Greg, it's all Stella, just making that forward. And making this even more impressive is her dedication to weightlifting, winning her first competitive weightlifting meet by lifting a total of 710 pounds. Look at that.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
That is a lot of PS5 throws.
Thank
A lot of
you.
PS5 throws. But yeah, I'll let you go ahead and have the floor as well.
Yeah, I feel like my journey into the game space was very weird. I was kind of a latecomer to games just because family of immigrants, like we didn't have a lot of money growing up, so I got into it in college, which was like a whole other thing. So I started streaming in like 2014. Then I got my job at IGN in 2019, and the rest was kind of history. But yeah, so now I kind of do freelance hosting, freelance I like write articles for different outlets as well, and I also do my own content creation. So it's a lot of different things, but it's really fun. I love the game space so much because I think it really just feeds everyone's curiosity and creativity.
Awesome. Thanks so much. So like the funny story about how I met Stella, I was at GDC just like randomly doing work, and all of a sudden she like sits across the table from me, and I was like, "Is that Stella?" I was like, "Excuse me,
It's really
are you
funny.
Stella?" And it was a really awkward conversation, and then we ended up walking to the Xbox event together. So that was really fun. But yeah, moving on. We have none other than Michael Higham. Is it is Higham, right? It's not
Yes.
Hickman.
No,
All right,
you got
cool.
it.
I've
got it,
always
bro.
like wondered, and I never asked you until now, even though we've known each other for a few years now. But
Got it in
yeah,
one.
Michael has been in games media for the better part of a decade as a writer, editor, and on-camera host, getting his professional start at GameSpot in 2016 before moving on to roles at Fanbyte and now IGN. Michael is known for bringing a passionate, profound expertise to his work. And you're someone who like just bleeds swaggy Pinoyism, and I am totally
Hey,
all about it. So yeah, take the floor,
I
man.
appreciate that. Swagapinos are still alive, man.
Let's go. Funky
Uh,
guy.
oh man. Yeah. Where do I start? I actually got my start in politics. I was a political consultant out of college. And I eventually got another job. And it was funny because I had been following games media since I was a child. Like GameSpot was my site. That was my homepage. Like I was active on forums. I watched the videos. I was very familiar with the personalities of GameSpot of that era, of the 2000s. But I also thought of it like, I'm never going to be a part of that because it's such a tough club to like break into. But I applied for a job at GameSpot in 2016, and I left my job at the time, moved to San Francisco, and kind of had to get out the mud a little bit because it's like you're starting in a new career path, and you're living in a more expensive city and taking less pay for the hopes that you are going to obtain what was ostensibly a dream job. But I think that the sort of, for lack of a better term, the glitz and glamour of being in games media, that was really fun. But what was really important was the fact that I found like very meaningful relationships through games media and through the games industry. Like my friends, the first friends I made when I moved to GameSpot, when I moved to San Francisco at GameSpot, those are still my friends to this day. Like we have like unbreakable bonds. These are people I want to spend time with outside of work. And like when I see them, rarely do our conversations always tail off to other things. And like, for example, like Stella is a really good friend, and like our conversations rarely ever have to do with games. And that speaks to like the types of people you meet and the connections that you make. These are genuine connections. And I think, not to get too esoteric, but like the thing I worried most about out of like high school and college was like, is my professional life going to like live up to the things that I loved most about this earlier time in my life, which was the social aspect? And I'm really happy that my professional life has really revolved around that social aspect. So it's like, yeah, it's really cool meeting like these games media folks that I looked up to when I was a kid. Like I worked with folks like Jeff Gerstmann and Brad Shoemaker at like Giant Bomb, and like all these people who influenced me, and like Greg Savin, who I've met and talked with a lot. Like these are influential people, but you come out the other end being like, no, these are meaningful connections that are outside of games. And I think that's like one of the most important things when I look back on my time and whether or not I made the right decision to move to San Francisco. And the answer is absolutely yes. And that's come with a lot of other hardships that you had to deal with. But I think the trade-off is the actual fulfilling aspect, putting yourself out there, being a part of something bigger, and going to events, just doing all that cool stuff that you really enjoy, on top of the fact that I've made lifelong friends and connections that are meaningful. And I'm just happy to be here, man.
As someone that's lived in the Bay Area all my life, like I love hearing that. So thanks for talking about all that.
Yeah.
All right. Last but not least, we have Chandler Treon. He's actually one of the newest members of the AAPI and gaming community, as he recently joined the group's Discord after doing a story on the first AAPI game Steam sale. Armed with an MA, armed with MAs in with degrees in technical communication and literature, he honed that passion with roles at Nextshark and Game Rant, and currently contributes to Bonus Action. So,
Yeah,
Chandler, take the floor.
thank you for that introduction. I may actually be the least. I think I have the least games writing experience here, games coverage experience, but I've been a journalist for my entire professional career. Um, my literature thesis was on the model minority myth and how it's either been reinforced or subverted in American cinema. That thesis is what got my foot in the door at Nextshark. I really wanted to cover the Asian American experience. At the time, it was the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. A lot of Asian hate going around, and wanted to do what I could to highlight it. Um, Spending a year there editing and writing was an incredible experience for somebody right out of college. And it kind of propelled me forward into doing what I wanted to do in terms of highlighting, like I said, Asian American experiences. Um, but gaming has always been a passion of mine, and I wanted to continue doing that, even if my actual professional career wasn't directly related to it. So I've just been doing it for the love of the game for the past year now. I was after a brief stint at Game Rant, I said, you know what, I want to do some more of this, but I don't want so much oversight. So I ended up finding a small community of people who wanted to write, but not be beholden to stockholders and donors and things like that. And so I joined the team at Bonus Action and have been covering indies and whatever I can get my hands on. Again, all for the love of the game.
Awesome.
And the love of the game is really what it's all about, because that's really why we're all here. So again, thank you all for all that. As the moderator, I am not going to talk all that much, but I did realize I didn't really introduce myself. I just introduced myself as a staff member for AAPI. But anyway, just real quick again, my name is Danreb Victorio. I want to say most of you know me as the as the owner and executive editor of smashpad.com. That is an independent games media website that I've been a part of since I was 14 years old. So yeah, like it's funny that Michael mentioned, having ties to GameSpot. That's actually where I got my start. I was a volunteer moderator, from ages 14 to 21. That was a good time. I got to interact with people like Greg Kasavin, Jeff Gerstmann. Yeah, like they were my heroes growing up. And like I am like old enough to remember when Greg Kasavin was on the forums and entered a contest to become a developer when he wasn't supposed to enter it, and he won. So yeah, and like all of a sudden now he's just this awesome guy just doing like great games like Pyre and Hades and whatever it may be. So it's really cool seeing all that happen. I didn't get my paid role in games until 2016 when I was hired as a community manager with Glue Mobile on a game called MLB Tap Sports Baseball. I've been there from 2016 to 2024. In 2021, we were acquired by EA, and I lasted about 3 more years before they shuttered my studio down. So yeah, I went through 6 months of unemployment before I was picked up by a nonprofit organization called Gamers Outreach. September will be my 2nd year there, and I have had an amazing time as their community manager. For those of you that don't know Gamers Outreach, they're a nonprofit that brings video games to kids in hospitals. And, the main ways we fundraise include doing events like Evo and PAX and collecting donations, but we also do what are called streamathons, which are really just charity streams that we do with a bunch of Twitch partners and whoever it may be to help us out. Our biggest event every year is Gamers for Giving that we do every April. And basically that is one of the biggest LAN parties in the United States, and something that we book the J3 Center in Michigan for. So yeah, it's definitely something that I'm really proud of. I'm glad that I've ended up there, and at the same time, I'm glad that I have the flexibility to talk to people like you. So yeah, let's go ahead and move forward with the panel. So Just the way that it'll work, I'm going to go ahead and ask the question. You guys can go ahead and answer the question at any order. And if I feel like we're a little lagging there, I'll just pick someone. But you're all charismatic people, and I believe in you all. So, yeah. All right. Question 1. How did you know you wanted to get into games media, and what steps did you take to make it happen? Did your family or parents have any impact in your pursuit of those goals?
I don't mind starting
Let's
if
do it.
nobody else has an answer. Okay. So it's kind of funny. This is the article that got me into games writing is the one that connected me with Siobhan. I told the story very briefly. But when I was at NextShark, I had an idea for an article. I wanted to do a very basic listicle, just top 10 Asian American video game characters, rather. I pitched it to my editor that way. He was like, "Sure, that sounds simple. That's something that we can edit very, very easily." Very sneakily, though, I had an ulterior motive. I wanted to highlight how few of them there are. It's very difficult just off the top of my head to think of 10. So that article took me a couple more days than it probably needed to. But the idea that it was difficult for me to think of 10 distinctly Asian American video game characters at the time, I think this was like 2018, 2019, caused a lot of controversy online. And I loved the discussion. I got a lot of horrible messages, but I also got a lot of, what about this character? Well, not Asian American. They're just Asian, right? They're Japanese or they're Chinese. They are distinctly saying Asian American in this article. And then it grew into the debate of like, okay, well, why are we pointing out Asian American versus just Asian? Does that as representation matter more than just having Asians in video games? And I loved it. I loved the debate. And I just wanted to keep chasing that feeling, starting conversations about topics that maybe people weren't really discussing or maybe had here and there, but hadn't really thought about it in the context of gaming as a medium. So when I left NextShark, I was just doing tech writing, and I'm sitting here writing articles about AI and how it's taking over Texas government. And one day I was just like, I can't do this without going back and chasing that feeling again. So first thing I did was just look for as many games freelance opportunities as I could, and then eventually landed at Bonus Action, where I'm lucky enough to be able to write what I want because there's not somebody judging how many clicks I get on an article or whether or not I'm going to upset somebody. So that's how I got my start and why I still do it today.
Kind of similar to your side of the story as well as like I kind of already touched on how I got how I kind of broke in was applying to a position that was, I don't want to say lesser than what I deserved, whatever, like that's beside the point, but being able to like take a step down to have that to break in. But I think I'm like, now I'm reflecting on not just how I got started in games media, but how I found my voice. And that's a thing that I imagine folks like us struggle with a little bit because in a way you don't want to be self-indulgent, but you also, you have something to say and you want to say it, but you got to find a way to communicate that is going to reach across to people who don't have the same, like, not language as in like speaking language, but like the mechanisms behind the way we think about representation and who we are and how we assert ourselves in the rest of the world. And so similarly, I was on an episode of The Lobby, which was GameSpot's podcast at the time. And the topic of the episode was that in 2016 is like the year of like diverse main characters in games. And let me tell you something about YouTube comments in 2016. Oh, I mean, I think they're worse now, but like it was a shock to my system because this was the first time I was ever on camera at GameSpot. And I got brought on. I was not great at it because it was my first time on camera, and I was like, I think this is good for video game. Like, I was it's a little cringy to look back on, but at least I know how much I've grown since then. But the conversation was about how there's a lot of diversity in the main protagonists in 2016 games at the time. And talking about things like Mafia 3 at the time, Watch Dogs 2, Quadrilateral Cowboy, Overwatch came out that year and had a really diverse set of characters and heroes there. And I think that was like cool to point out. Inoffensive. Like, who would get mad about that? Turns out a lot of people would. But I think that that was a tough intro to the space in which I'm like, oh, people are hostile about this kind of thing. And so I think that pushed me to like really think about how I communicate these things, really try to find my voice, and maybe like talk about things that are important to me when it comes to identity, and not force the issue, but find ways in which it makes sense. So it's like, I'm not bringing up the topic when it's not warranted or whatever, or like finding where it makes sense, and then being the one to be able to communicate that. Because when I think GameSpot had a fairly diverse set of people at the time as well, but I felt like this is how I can wedge myself into the conversation. This is what I bring to the table that no one else can or has done lately. So from that, it was kind of like a jumping off point, in which I was finding my voice. And like that took time too. Like I didn't have the answers from my first couple articles about these kinds of things. Even like years down the line, I look back on a lot of my old writing and think, oh, cool, I had a really good idea. I communicated it well enough, but I would write this completely different if I had to do it today. So it's like the process of finding your voice is like how I also found my place in games media. And like I'm really happy with where this had led me, because now I have like podcast episodes or videos or published works where people are like, oh, I remember when you said X, Y, and Z in that article. That was like that hit, that meant something. I'm like, damn, yes, like that was the goal all along. Things like what I wrote about like characters in Valorant when I was at Fanbyte, or my 1,000 Times Resist review, where it's like no one else can write this review. Or like there are other people who could, but I'm the only one at IGN who can write this review. Like, and no one has this perspective, and this is an important perspective to have, because this is what the game is literally about. So it's moments like that where I can identify like, oh, this is for me, and being able to seize those moments and not be self-indulgent. That's the balancing act. But when you're able to hit that, like I think I've gotten to the age and experience in which I can do that pretty naturally. Like that feels good. And like that's some of the most satisfying stuff in games media. And I think that's like where I've kind of planted my flag in some way. And that's, I wish everyone to like have that feeling, because it's very satisfying, and it feels good to put yourself out there and be very confident in the way that you put yourself out there, especially when it comes to identity. And sometimes that's a tough conversation to have.
Yeah, I think a big part of that is, especially with identity, is being seen. Just hearing you talk about, it's like I'm the only one that can write this, and this and that is. I kind of felt that same kind of thing too when I was writing, or when I finished my review of Until Then. For those of you that aren't familiar with Until Then, it is a narrative story from a studio that's based in the Philippines. And that was also the first time I've had one of my quotes in a trailer, as well as it's one of the highest performing pieces on Smashpad. And I was like, cool, like this is something that really was important to me, and like I feel like people saw it, especially in the Philippines. So it's cool that you bring that up, especially since we talk about things like identity and representation. But yeah, thank you guys for answering this question first, because I feel like out of everybody here, like you two probably have like the most, if anything, like traditional jobs in games media, whereas with with Krysta and Stella, it's a little different. So yeah. Anyway, I didn't mean to butt in, but I'm sure Stella has something to say before Krysta gets back.
No, it's funny because like I never expected or thought of myself as entering games media. It's so funny because when I first started streaming, I was in college. I was going to AAPI in Indiana, so I was just streaming there, and this was the era of when everyone was moving to LA for game stuff. This was before the shift to San Francisco. So I saw a lot of my fellow streamers moving to LA, and I thought, okay, well, that's probably the move because I really want to maybe do esports because I was really into FPS games. I was really into Overwatch when that first came out. I ran my own community games. So I moved to LA. And of course, it's kind of hard to live in LA, especially as a streamer. So I had to take up like 2-3 jobs at some point. And when I was working a corporate job, I was like, wait, this isn't really what I came out here for. And that was about 3-4 years of living in LA and doing that. So I quit my job and I went full-time streaming. And luckily, a few months later, that's when I saw the job listing for IGN. They wanted a gameplay producer. That came across my Twitter when Twitter was good. And so I replied back and, I applied that way. And I was shocked when I got the job because I was like, I didn't finish college. I was just a streamer, but I could still video edit. And one of my most valuable things that I tell people is that don't discredit your self-taught skills because they're still skills that you know. And a lot of people don't know that. But for me back then, I was like, oh my God, me having learned how to use Photoshop or Sony Vegas, I guess that's enough for me to get like my foot in the door. So when I started, it was very much a non-front facing role. I just captured a lot of gameplay capture for like first minutes, stuff like that. And I forget what happened. I think it was like some Apex thing that dropped because Apex was out and that was huge. And I loved that. Played it every day. And I remember a lore video dropped and I was like, oh my God, I know this lore because it's Titanfall 2. So I did the thing of like just pouring everything into it for a day because the video dropped at like 10 a.m. Then by like 2 p.m., I had edited it. I had like done the VO and I posted it. And that week it got like 1 million views. And I think that's what sparked internally like, oh, okay, Stella kind of knows FPS games. She's kind of good at this. And so that kind of lifted me into the position of like, oh, okay, you can cover FPS games because the person whose job I was taking was very FPS focused as well. But I remember I had a male coworker who was kind of like, oh, don't worry, I'll carry you through these games so we can get gameplay capture. So it was very satisfying to get that role myself and kind of cement that as my kind of persona going forward. But of course, with taking that, I mean, the FPS world is still very misogynistic. So in that, I got a lot of weird comments because I would always get the reviews for like Battlefield. I think Battlefield 2042, that was my first review. And people were like, I remember being shocked at seeing this comment. It's just, and it said, a woman reviewing Battlefield. I was like, dude, what is it? This is 2019. What's wrong with you? So, and then I remember firing back at a lot of these internet hate comments. And then people started saying, oh, okay, Stella doesn't take crap from anyone. This is actually kind of fun because I would get a little creative with some replies, maybe not appropriately so, but it got the point across. And for a while I thought, oh man, is this too much? Like, am I doing too much? But I remember getting a lot of comments from other women and other people who are AAPI saying, hey, I really appreciate you highlighting this because we do get comments like this all the time. It's just sometimes some people don't feel confident enough to say anything about it, or, some people genuinely do not realize that is still happening. So I was like, oh, okay, so this is actually pretty important. So that was kind of my opening to, oh yeah, I guess games, the community has not really changed too much over the years, but yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for that. Like, yeah, it's crazy just seeing how like, people just expect that they can carry you in games like, Call of Duty and whatever it may be. But yeah, they can carry me though. There's always... I do want to get back to the second part of the question. I feel like Michael did a pretty good job like nailing this part. But Chandler, I was wondering if your parents or family had any impact in your pursuit of not even really just games media, but journalism in general.
I've been very fortunate to have supporting parents. When I started undergrad, I was pre-vet. I was going to go to veterinarian school. I even had a job as a vet tech in high school, and so I was working in a clinic on the animals. And at a certain point, I was like, "Oh, I'm bad at biology and chemistry. I'm not going to be able to pass the classes that I need to get into vet school." And I don't know if anybody knows anything about vet school. There is one in Texas. It's Texas A&M, and it is the prestigious vet school. And so very quickly I had to go, oh, I need to shift. I need I need to move away from vet school immediately. And it's never really what I wanted to do. I had that internalized feeling that I had to do something impressive, probably something medical, to earn my parents' approval. And I remember going to them and going, I really want to write about games and movies.
Mhm.
And they were like, okay, well then just be the best at that. Just be the best at writing about games and movies. And so I said, okay, cool. I will try. No promises, but I'll do my best. And so I've been very fortunate. I have an interesting mix of my mom's side is Filipino, my dad's side is Vietnamese. Um, but I think that they have been extremely supportive despite having their own parents who maybe weren't so much. So I personally have been very lucky in that regard.
Well, okay, so my mom is pretty supportive. She does not understand what it is that I do. Even when I was at IGN, she had no idea. Even when I interviewed Tom Cruise, she was like, okay, but why? Like, don't worry. She was happy because she was like, oh my God, tell him that I love Top Gun. And I was like, really, Mom, you like Top Gun? Because she is a very Korean woman. So it was very funny to me. But yeah, it's so funny because my dad, it's because it's so weird. I feel like Asian parents expect so much greatness out of us. It's so much pressure. But my dad definitely wanted me to go the more traditional, like medical route, whether it was a nurse, something with stability, which, you know what, there is some validity to that. But ever since I was a kid, I was always really into creative stuff like arts, writing. I really wanted to be a writer ever since I was a kid. So that stayed consistent. So for the longest time when I was just a streamer, my dad had no idea what I was doing, why I was doing it. And then when I started working for IGN, he still didn't get it, but he was like, oh, okay, you're actually like writing articles. You're doing these host things. I don't know if he's still supportive at all. It's one of those weird things where I didn't live up to his expectations and I don't think I ever will. And that's fine because this is for me. So yeah, I don't know. I think my mom's support is enough, but also I'm happy doing what I'm doing. And I don't think with lots of therapy, I no longer need their approval for things. So it's great.
Yeah. I feel very lucky to have had a mom who was also like very supportive in whatever I wanted to do. I think that's a product of her treating me and my brother as like her babies. Like, I think I get a lot of like my sensibilities from my mom. Like I'm so much like my mom. Like when I talk about like Kirby or Rowlet or any like cute round Pokemon, like it's like my mom talking about me.
Okay, wow.
Like it's like, oh my, I was a precious baby to her like the entire time, man. I come back home, I'm like, Mom, I'm 30 years old. Like I'm out here, I'm doing my thing. And then she'd be like, oh, but no, you're still, oh, Anak, you're still my baby. And I'm like,
Aww.
yeah, I am. And it's like, you go through the rebellious teenage years. And I was like, no, I'm a grown man. It's like, I really wasn't. And then it's like you horseshoe back around to being like, nah, I actually like being treated like a baby. So my mom, but like an extension of that is like, do what makes you happy. When I went to college, I'm like, oh, I want to study political science and I want to like get into politics. She was like, cool, man, go figure it out. Like you're smart, you'll figure it out. And because like, she's like, I can offer support and like, and all that. But like, you're smart enough to figure all that out. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, at least I have her support. And so when it came to games media, I think the thing she was bummed about was me moving to San Francisco. I was like, oh, I'm moving to San Francisco. And she's like, oh, but what about me? What about like your friends here? And I'm like, oh, don't say that. I was a mama's boy growing up, and will always be a mama's boy. So yeah, she was supportive. And the thing is, like my brother and her are the reasons why I was so into video games to begin with. She's very supportive of the hobby too. Like she was like, oh, what do you want for your birthday? And I'm like, oh, I want a new video game. She's like, sick. Tell me what it is. I'll get it. My brother, who's much older than me, would always have like the new gen console because he was able to work and buy that stuff himself. And so I would get his hand-me-downs. And my mom was like, oh, you guys love video games. How about I just like, for her, I think that made gift giving very easy for her.
Oh, yeah.
And so So that was like cool. She was like supportive of the hobby. By extension, she was like, "Oh, there's a job for doing this," and I was like, "Yeah." And she's like, "You should do that." And I do miss this now because she passed away a couple years ago, and she would watch my YouTube videos, and she would watch episodes of the GameSpot podcast, and I'm like, one, I know you don't know anything we're talking about, and two, I would say some crazy stuff on these podcasts. Like,
Yep.
we didn't have a filter over at GameSpot; we could say whatever we wanted, and whenever we go off topic on games, I would. Stella, you're familiar with how wild like I might get when I have a microphone in front of me.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, I can't believe my mom is watching this. But my mom is also kind of oblivious to a lot of things. So she's like, oh, my son is on TV. She would tell all the aunties and uncles like, oh, Mickey, he's on TV. That's what they call me. And like, she'd brag about her son being on TV. I was on YouTube and I was on the GameSpot.com. I was not on TV, but she would just say that for simplification. And so I think that also speaks to how like she was proud of, not just like seeing me on a television in 4K, but like knowing that I was getting paid to do something that I just genuinely enjoyed doing. And then, she got me a lot of views because I know, she would tell me like, oh, I saw you on a new video. I'm like, ooh, I said some crazy stuff in the first 5 minutes of that episode. Ooh. But yeah, that's just like something I dearly miss hearing from her. But I also will always hold that. I was like, oh no, I'm doing something that she supported. I'm doing something that I love and making an impact on how I can. And yeah.
It's so funny because we have such different experiences, but also my parents being very anti-computer, anti-games for most of my life. And then when I went into college, I was like, oh my God, wait, I have adult money. I can do what I want.
It's crazy.
So then like them suppressing me kind of like exploded me into this genre of things they did not want me to have access to. And now I have a career in it, which is very funny. So it's almost like, their lack of support almost rocketed me into that.
Yeah, it's like different routes to the same result. Yeah.
It's very funny. Not the most ideal route, but it's
Sure.
still happened, which I think is very funny.
Yeah.
Your story about Tom Cruise kind of reminded me of an experience I had with my parents, where the things that they're most impressed by are not the ones that I would expect. I remember I had an interview with Joe Biden's Secretary of Education at the time. And so I spoke with him about like student loan forgiveness, affirmative action, things like that. And I thought my parents would think that was so cool. I don't think they read the article. But then I had a 4-minute interview with Stephen Yeun and Ali Wong, and now my mom's going around telling everyone, "Oh, Ali Wong said that my son has nice hair," and I'm like, "Why is that more focused on here?"
That is a high compliment, though.
Oh yeah, my friend cuts my hair. They put that on their Instagram page. They were like, "This little clip is my new advertisement vehicle."
The testimonials went crazy, man.
Yeah.
That's so good how you just go from Joe Biden to a celebrity and all of a sudden people care. And I'm like, come on, this is important too. But yeah. Anyway, folks, apologies. We are going through some technical difficulties. That's why Krysta is rejoining us. I think she's on her phone now. But,
I am. Sorry.
Yeah.
Can you hear me?
It's all good. We can hear you. We're glad you're here.
Oh, good.
You do see the question, yeah?
I do. I was going to say, I have a pretty funny story about this as well, because at first my parents were pretty like anti this career path of going into video games. They were very traditional, like go to college. I actually was supposed to be a lawyer. I took like the LSAT. I applied and got into law school and was about to go to law school, and then had basically a moment of panic and was like, no, I don't want to do that. This is a terrible future. I don't want to do that at all. It seems I'm making a huge mistake, to go do this and spend a ton of money going to law school and then getting into a career that I absolutely would hate. So that's how I had actually ended up at Nintendo. Is like I just saw a job for like entry level roles in gaming, and I was like, I'll apply to every single one of these jobs and just see where it goes. And ended up getting a job at Nintendo, and then stayed there for 13 years, moving through the ranks there. And at first, my parents were like, what are you doing? Like, video games is like a joke career. No one's going to take you seriously. But then eventually, like, she totally came around and was super supportive of, you know, what I was doing. I think she saw how happy it made me to be in a space where I was just really passionate about. And she also had the Asian mom thing where she saw me in videos and was like, my daughter's on TV. I'm like, okay, no. But
There you go.
anyways, also, I guess, so that I think that helped her kind of understand a little bit, you know, maybe she saw my passion through what I was putting out there. And
Mhm.
so the funniest part about the story is that when I left Nintendo to start this independent content creation, you know, to start this new part of my career, the first place where we were filming the podcast and filming all of our content was a spare room out of her house. We had no money and no like funding for like a studio space in the beginning, and we just needed a place to get started. And she just had like a bedroom that, you know, she wasn't really using. And I asked her, like, can I use that room and turn it into like a mini studio? So if you look back on like very, very like early 2022 episodes of the Kit and Krista podcast and all the content we were making, it was literally out of my mom's like tiny spare bedroom. And then now we have our own studio space, of course. But in the beginning, it was her house that we were doing all of this in. And she was super supportive, and she would come with like Asian mom snacks. Like she'll show up with like the tray of fruit, you know, and she'll like show up with like
Yeah.
little Asian snacks and stuff like that. So, I mean, it was an amazing turnaround for her. So I was happy to see that, honestly.
Yeah, I love hearing that. I do remember those early episodes. Honestly, did not even know. I was like, wow, they already afford a studio. This is crazy. So yeah, awesome stuff, guys. I just wanted to like, you know, quickly talk about, you know, what I went through, especially with my family. So my dad's the strict one, but you know, luckily both of my parents, like, they supported whatever I did. The one who wasn't really into the whole idea of becoming a journalist was my grandpa, or my Lolo. But he also like is from the Philippines, and I'm sure like, you know, Michael or even Chandler might even be able to relate. If you say journalist to a hardcore Filipino, they're just gonna assume political killing, you know. So it's like, oh yeah, it's dangerous and whatever it may be. And I was
Yeah.
like, you know, I love journalism, but I'm not trying to be like the most serious journalist. I just want to like review tech and
Yeah.
things like that.
It's like if they grew out of the Marcos regime, like
Yeah.
that stuff is very like that is like that's the context in which they hear that word and be like, oh no.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it also helps like if you ended up working at like a brand name, like, you know, I worked at EA for a bit, so that got my parents off my back. I don't know if like Krista can relate to it, but I'm sure like if it were my parents and they heard Nintendo when it was their idea to get me into Nintendo in the first place, like it would make sense for them. So yeah.
Wasn't a doctor, lawyer,
Anyway,
engineer,
let's
so
go.
she didn't care. She didn't care. She was like, "You're not a doctor? No. You're not a lawyer? No. You're not an engineer? No. Not approved." Even though it was Nintendo.
Yeah, and uh, in my family, like I grew up with like the nickname DR. So everyone would assume that like I'd be a doctor or whatever. And, like I thought so too. And then all of a sudden,
Oh my god.
yeah, I thought so too. Then all of a sudden I had to deal with blood. I had to like do science. And I'm like, I don't like any of this. I like writing. Like I remember when I was a kid, 500 word essay, no problem. I used to do other people's essays, no problem. But yeah, it is what it is there. So yeah, thank you guys. Awesome answers. Love hearing it. Like, you know, it's like hearing and seeing you guys on other podcasts or like reading your work. It's like we never get to really hear about the familial stories just because it's like it's not something that the mainstream would understand or care about. But here at API and Gaming, like these are the stories that we want to hear, and I'm glad we're finally getting a chance to do that. Anyway, moving on with the second question. This is probably the doozy out of all these. How has the current gaming industry climate, as far as what we've seen with employment, affected your work? So,
Ooh, I think because so I've been in a lot of conversations with folks about like, well, especially when we go to GDC and I meet up with a lot of like up and coming journalists, up and coming writers, people want to get into the space, whether it's through media or it's through game dev, is that as the space contracts and there's fewer jobs, there's fewer space, there's less space, not just for juniors and up and comers, but because historically that it's been a predominantly white space, and that comes with seniority, it tends to be that those are the folks who hold on to their jobs when there are cuts. And so not only do you lose up and comers, but you also lose marginal voices who just broke into the space. And so there's less space for them to exist and to have jobs here. And so I think by extension, you get a lot more of it's become increasingly homogenous in a lot of areas. And it's like sad to think about, because for several years leading up to this point, we've had a lot of people like championing diversity and, having uplifting different voices and movements to put marginal folks into positions in which they can make decisions or can have an impact on something. And then financially, I guess, like, it doesn't make sense to like have as big of teams, and the ones who get cut are proportionately going to be those marginal voices that you were trying to uplift. And that's not to say like it's all doom and gloom necessarily, but it is a tough climate to navigate. And with contraction, there's hopefully another expansion of it. And I hope that enough people still cling on to it, because as more and more layoffs happen, the more and more of these types of people find work elsewhere in other industries, and they just get boxed out. Um, like, this is a constant conversation that we have, is like people just exit the industry. Just like, well, there's no space for me, so I'm going to take my talents elsewhere, and they don't come back. And that's sucks, because there's a lot of talented people who had the potential to be much more than they were given the opportunity to be. And I hope that this contraction doesn't last. It quickly turns into an expansion, because I don't want to lose a lot of those potential voices and those people who are on the sidelines. Like, I don't want them to like be sitting on the sidelines forever, waiting for their opportunity. We've waited for our opportunities long enough, and it was in our grasp, and it feels like it was snatched away from a lot of people. And yeah, that's it's in a way, it's made it like I feel very privileged and lucky to have held on to my position. I've had bouts of unemployment because of layoffs. Thankfully, I was able to like get back in. Not everybody has that opportunity, and I don't know what the answer is, because if I had the answer, I might be elsewhere speaking on it. But I just like hope that people like can stick around long enough to eventually be there when opportunities open up, when they can assert themselves once again, and not to give up. Again, there are circumstances that dictate us to find employment elsewhere, find opportunities elsewhere, unfortunately. But I hope that there is a time in which space will be created for the folks who got boxed out.
This idea of the contraction and sort of the loss of voices is something that I've been thinking about a lot as well, especially, beyond the space that we exist in with covering games, but also in the space of people developing games. Because nowadays, just even like the indie development scene, or the more smaller game development scene, is so ultra competitive. There seems to be even a contraction of that space as well. There's less funding for games like that, that are not like a sure thing. That's not a AAA studio. That's not a existing franchise. So that's an area where I've been really inspired by some of the amazing games that I've played in the last 5+ years, that really showcase the Asian American, or just like the immigrant experience. Like, a lot of those games were so inspirational, and I felt so seen when I played games like that. I just feel like there's even a contraction of that as well. And that's really concerning, because I think as an art form, you want to be showcasing your own experience and reaching people with a similar experience. And if that space is also contracting, and you lose the ability for people to tell those stories within our medium, that's a real concern. So I also don't have an answer, because if I did, I would tell people what the answer is.
Right. Yeah.
to get more games that showcase our our very unique experiences. But yeah, I just hope that those stories don't go untold forever, because that would be such a shame for it to for it to never come see the light of day.
Yeah, speaking strictly from the journalism side of things, so like making a living writing about video games, covering gaming news, um, it's bleak. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. And it's not. This is not a problem that's unique to gaming. It's a lot of it has to do with search engine algorithms, AI. There's a really big problem with large game news companies, conglomerates, whatever you want to call them, um, taking advantage of people who want to get into this industry.
Mhm.
Um, we have abysmal freelance rates for people writing articles. You're either getting a flat rate per article, or you're on one of the more recent developments is Valnet starting to experiment with pays per click. Um, so you won't even make the same amount of money on an article that you were guaranteed $10 on if it doesn't get the same amount of clicks. So you may have just wasted an hour or two of your afternoon when you could have been actively looking for a job that will pay you better. And that's if you're even able to hold on to that job for more than a couple of months before they decide that they're not making enough money off of your writing and just cut a bunch of people all at once. Um, I'd say a year ago, it was more common to find outlets that had a pretty staunch no AI writing policy. But now so many more of these outlets are embracing AI and have decided to preemptively cut writers because they think that they can save money and cut corners. And then once they realize they've made a mistake, they hire a bunch again, they overhire, and then they cut a bunch of people. So if you're even able to get your foot in the door, it's very difficult to keep your foot in the door and even swing it open. Um, I hate this term, but there's also like the bamboo ceiling that we hear about, the issue of Asian people in the workforce having a harder time reaching these senior positions that are maybe more stable and less likely to be cut. And a lot of that has to do with social dynamics and who you know. So if you get cut from one outlet, you may be more likely to get picked up at another outlet if you know somebody, but somebody very early in their career is not likely to have these connections. So I don't have the solution either, but I have what I think is a better option. If I was starting out as a young professional wanting to get into gaming, I would probably pursue the route that Stella went and just start creating things. Don't focus so much and stress so much about applying. If you want to get your words out there, if you want to get your voice out there, just put it out there. There's so many avenues now that you can do that. You've got YouTube. Um, You've got various outlets for putting out your writing. You can create your own blog. I mean, that's essentially what you did, Danreb, from what you've told us. And I think that that's still a very valid route to go. You'll be fighting the algorithm the whole way, but at least you'll be putting something out there. And once you've got something tangible, something that you can feel and show to people, hey, I've done this, you're going to be much more likely to get your foot in the door than somebody who has a degree but doesn't have anything really besides that piece of paper to show for
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, I feel like especially right now, content creators are almost taking over as the main source of, oh, we need PR done with them. We need to market our games with them because they have a following. And for some reason, the general public seems to they seem to align themselves more with individual people and their personalities versus companies like GameSpot, IGN. Having worked at IGN, it's very different seeing the loyalty that they have to people versus brands now. And I think that's just how the younger generation is coming up. TikTok's at your hands. You can just swipe and you come across like millions of people per day. So there is validity in being a content creator, right? You're still doing the thing that you love as long as you stay genuine to yourself and the community. Because right now we are also in this weird like grifter culture where it makes you fast money, but people are going to remember you for that. So if you do want like a professional career, just keep that in mind. I do feel like with employment, though, it's very interesting, especially for someone like me, because I've been so outspoken about certain political things, about things people say to me, and me clapping back at them. it's very frustrating how some major companies want safe people to hire, right? So if you have a history of that, they're just like, ooh, no, might be a little too spicy. But then that's also isolating like a huge, diverse crowd that you might be able to pull from who are really talented. So it feels like it's just this struggle of like, okay, do you want to stand your ground and speak on things that matter to you, or do you want to pull back just so you might have this chance of employment? And it's really frustrating. It feels like there's not an even ground that you can really stand on right now. So I guess it's just do your best, be your authentic self, and I think that's the most important thing right now.
Yeah. I guess one more thing I'll also say is that I think like Stella you pointed out too, like the landscape of what games coverage looks like, if specifically with media, has changed drastically since I was a kid. Since even like when I was a young adult, like I was still attached to websites and the people at the websites. That's not
Yeah.
necessarily the case anymore because of the way media is presented to people. And so if like this is still something you want to break into, it's tougher now because like there's fewer salary jobs you apply to, and like you don't just stay there and like look for upward movement and hope that that is your career for the foreseeable future. So this isn't to downplay like the passion that you have, but it's like you can still create on your own, and everything that you create is also a portfolio piece
Mhm.
that you can be proud of, or that you can show like, hey, I've done the work. There are a lot of great writers who were never published on a major site but had a blog of their own that I read. I'm like, oh, you are a talented writer and you get it. You just weren't able to be published on another site. Like that doesn't make you any less than someone who has like published something on a big site. So like your ideas, your content, your talents can be the great equalizer, but it has to be out there for people to see in some form, whether it is your personal TikTok channel, your personal blog. Don't let the landscape dissuade you from putting your voice out there. It is tougher. Don't get me wrong, it is tougher, but there are avenues to like keep pace. And that also means like maybe you have to like take a job that isn't your passion job in the meantime. That does mean a lot more work. That means a lot of your free time is going to be dedicated to building that portfolio or keep creating content. And I hate that's what the landscape is, but the hope is that eventually that body of work then becomes how you pitch yourself to other people, and then becomes your actual full-time thing. And that kind of goes for everybody. You know, I know we're here for AAPI and all that, but it applies to like a lot of diverse voices who are struggling to find how they wedge themselves into these things. Because also, if you run your own blog, you run your own channels, you answer to yourself. And hopefully you can be your true authentic self and say the things that you want to say, and not be beholden by a company line. Um, and then hopefully you find your audience there. Like someone will find you, or you can pitch yourself in a way it's like, hey, this is who I am, man. Like you take it or leave it. Um, so I don't know. That's like, don't be dissuaded by the job prospects if you just want to create. It is harder, but you can still do the work if you really want to.
Yeah, and it's tougher, but it's definitely still something that you can pursue.
Mhm.
I do think it's very funny because like even skills like World of Warcraft raiding skills, like being the raid organizer. That is legitimate
It
skills
really
that
is.
have
Yeah.
gotten people jobs, right? So it's like, think about every little thing that you can use to your advantage. And even if you do pitch your ideas to an outlet and they say no, make that for yourself because that's still an idea that you want to put your efforts into. And if it means that much to you, you should do it. Which is something that I feel like a lot of my freelancer friends get frustrated with. Like, oh, I couldn't sell this. It's like, okay, well, make it your own so that next time they see, oh, wait, this idea was really cool, actually.
Mhm.
Maybe we should take on the next thing. I think that is something that's really valuable. Like, just keep creating, right? Like, don't let that discourage you.
Yeah, I actually have a bunch of viewpoints, but I'll, talk about what's really relevant. First of all, as someone that's been a community manager for the last 10 years who like sort of like lucked into it, um, at the end of the day, it's like your passion will show with whatever it is you do. And especially if you're a writer, like if you really care about what you're doing, like all of that really matters. And, when these layoffs really started happening, like, you know, 3 going on 4 years ago, I had a lot of what's called what's the term? Survivor's guilt.
Yeah.
You guys are familiar with that? And I went to my first game awards like 2 years ago, and this was when it was all happening. And
That's where we met.
Yeah, that's where we met. Yeah.
Hell yeah.
And it was like, all right, like this is rough, but also I was like, cool, my game still makes millions of dollars. Like, so I'm good. And then all of a sudden, I was laid off 2 months later, and I was like, okay, yeah, this could happen to anybody. And then like when when I got invited to that Zoom and we were laid off like that, I was like, cool. I kind of like expected this because I had a lot of my friends who worked on other games like already cut already, and like the main thing that came to my mind was everybody like who I chilled with and was down with is like I kind of have to compete with all of them now, and like that sucks, especially being a community manager when most studios, if they have one, probably only have one. So it's small enough to actually know almost who everybody is. And I was fortunate enough to have 30 interviews with different companies in my 6 months of unemployment. And I think like the hardest part, aside from all the no's, was just seeing how many roles were just reposted because they were either one, not real, or two, it's like, all right, they were being so picky that they wouldn't pick some of the most experienced people available for the job. And like that really ate at me. And I, as someone who has always like put a lot of like preparation into everything I do, like that sucks. And that really affected me. And like, Chandler was talking about, talking to kids at GDC who want to do what you do. Like, I'm gonna be straight up. I was telling them, no, don't pursue it right now. It's not the most ideal time. Maybe things will get back to the way they were, but it's tough. We're talking about different cycles, but it is what it is there. And then, going back to games media, I've been doing this for almost 20 years, and I finally got paid for something like last month. My review of Pragmata was the first time I ever got paid for anything in games media. And I also, just finally had a successful pitch for something I can't talk about quite yet for a bigger avenue. And I'm like, all right, it took me this long, but at the same time, I'm finally doing it. Am I making a real living? No, but at the same time, like it's a milestone for me. And if people have that same mentality, I think it can be easier, however way we go about it. So yeah, that's my stance on it. Thank you for offering all of yours. This next question is sort of related. Some of you already went over it, but just go ahead and ask it anyway. After listening to all of our takes on it, for the people who want to do what you're doing now, what steps would you recommend they take?
I feel like we've kind of covered it. But yeah, definitely. I think as much as it sucks, definitely tailor your resume to what the job is for. Rearrange things. You don't have to completely remake your resume each time. But yeah, I do think that constantly learning, because the landscape's always changing. I mean, like a lot of people don't know how to make short form videos, right? But that's huge right now. A lot of people would rather listen to like a 3-minute video, 1 to 3 minute video about their news than read it. And I think that's something that's very valuable. So being able to adjust to these different strategies, that's very important. So I think the biggest piece of advice that I give is like, make as much content as you consume. That way it's not just like, I don't know, trash in your mind that just sits there, right? You have to be able to output that and show that you can change with the times as well. So it's frustrating, but you got to learn stuff like CapCut, Canva, all those things that people might want to use. Even if you don't like it, I feel like it's something that like companies will ask for just in case.
What's that quote that people say, like, make it exist and then make it good? So don't be afraid, I think, to just like do it. It's really scary to put yourself out there because you're just like laying it all out there for people to look at and judge you. And the internet is very unkind and it's a very harsh place. But yeah, if like you have something to say and you have like a perspective that you want to share, just get it out there. It doesn't have to be perfect. Just like get it out there and then like learn from that and like get better each new time you put something else out there, you know? So that first step can be very scary, but everybody here took that first step many, many times, and we're all still here, and we are still smiling most of the time, and we all still exist. So don't be
Yeah,
scared.
yeah.
Just take that first step, you know? It can change everything for you.
Yeah. This is a situation in which I don't necessarily follow the advice that I give, because listen, I've been doing this for a long time. I still feel that way about things where like I'm too shy to pitch an idea, or I'm too shy to make it myself because it's not going to be good enough. And like this, I'm sure anyone has heard this before, is like, don't let perfect be what's the word, the obstacle to good, whatever variation of that proverb might be. Is like, yeah, that is true though. Like, put it out there. It might be, there's a lot of, like I said, back in 2016, everything I made was kind of cringe, kind of to like very cringe. But it's like that, I don't get to where I am without that. Like, you have to be cringy. I'm sorry, man. Like that's part of the deal. If you knock it out of the park in like your first couple tries, you're a generational talent. But there are very few generational talents, and that's okay. Not everyone can be Shohei Ohtani, all right? But like, it's like there's building blocks. It's always building blocks. And I was talking about this before. It's like, it took me a while to find my voice. Like I learned how to be nuanced in the discussions about identity and history and all this other stuff that you bring to the table. You don't just get it in one. You got to build towards it. And unfortunately, building towards it is like not failures. Like you don't have to think of them as failures, but they're like, you know, they're it's gonna be okay, man. Like do the thing, because like if there's anything I've learned like post college is that knowing how to do something, you just got to do it. You got to give it a try. Listening to lectures is cool. Listening to tutorial videos is great and all, but that it doesn't mean anything to you until you get your hands on the thing that you're trying to do. And then that starts to make a lot more sense. Then that tutorial video, that lecture you remember, it's different because now you can put those words into action. Like, you know how that relation looks like, especially with like video production is something that a lot of people want to do. There's a lot of variables that go into video production. And Stella, you're talking about like short form video. Short form video isn't easier than long form video. It's a different skill set. It's a different set of tools that you have to think about, or it's different trends that you're trying to key in on. It's not, yeah, it's not easier. It's not, it's just different, but you need to understand what those nuances are, and you don't until you do it. Scary for sure. And again, like that's something I still struggle with. But yeah, it's like, give it a shot. Don't be afraid. It is scary. Don't be afraid, but give it a try and see where it takes you. Like that's, because that's the only way in which you are going to build that portfolio that you can then pitch to other people to get you where you want to be. Yeah, baby steps. It's fine. You can be cringe. It's all good, man.
Well, I feel like I need my own proverb now, so mine will be inspired by Michael. The road to success is paved with cringe, and it's true. It's true, and there are many forms of cringe. The one that I'd like to bring up is LinkedIn. I hate
yeah.
LinkedIn,
Oh yeah, it's the
but
worst.
those connections that you make with people may get you a job down the line. And I'm not just talking about sending out, rapid fire connections to people and then they never see your face again beyond your profile pictures. I'm talking about sending cold messages saying, "Hey, you work in an industry that I want to work in. Can I have an informational interview with you? Can I ask you a couple of questions? Do you have any advice for me? Any little bit of wisdom that you can get from the people in the industry in which you want to work, and the career path that you want to be in will be immensely helpful." And I don't know how many times I have suggested to other friends looking for jobs, either in gaming or other industries, to do this. And then later down the line, they got a message from somebody that they had an informational with, where they said, "Hey, we just opened up this position. It's not public yet, but I remember you being very passionate. I remember you asking very good questions. Do you want to set up a serious interview?" Uh, Things like that are so important in an era where people are just sending rapid fire resumes and connection requests. Which I mean, is something else that you do have to do, unfortunately. Um, but just make as many connections as you can, either in person or online. You need to be memorable.
Mhm.
Um, and if people can connect a name to a face, that puts you so much further than all of the other applications that they get either through LinkedIn or through their own website.
Yeah. One more thing I want to say about like content creation is also um, find a niche that needs filling. I think that it's a little bit tougher because it's kind of hard to figure out what those niches are until like you are, unless you're like really paying attention. But a lot of starts in games media are like, you know, guides writers, newsrooms who have a gap in expertise for something that is kind of big. And I think I think about Final Fantasy 14 a lot, where when I was at Fanbyte, that was my job was to cover Final Fantasy 14 because it was huge and it was getting mad numbers. But it's hard to find people in media who have the writing chops, who are caught up with the game, who understand it at a very deep level, who can speak to it. And there's like a couple freelancers where I'm like, oh my God, like you fill in this gap. I can work with you. Maybe your writing still needs a lot of work, but that's what me as an editor can do. But you have an expertise gap, or like you're filling an expertise gap that I need to like take care of. And so that's something to keep in mind. That can't be everything, of course, but that can be like a tool in your tool belt. It's like, oh, I know a lot about Warframe, and I know that this big site doesn't have a Warframe expert to talk about like the biggest news or the latest updates. That's something that could be mutually beneficial. So like maybe think a little bit about that if you are exist in those spaces. And also this like sounds kind of stupid if I say it out loud, but like follow trends, understand like what, like not just, oh, what the biggest game is coming up, how videos are made. And kind of goes back to Stella, what you're talking about with short form videos. Like really understand why certain videos trend, why something goes viral. And like a small example is like for short form videos, like that first like 3 to 5 seconds is some of the most important stuff in that video. If you can understand that, it's like, oh, now I have a framework for how to do short form video. If I can nail that 5-second right there, because sometimes that's all you get. Sometimes all you get is 3 seconds before someone swipes to the next video. If you can nail that first 3 to 5 seconds, that might be the difference maker. So that's a microcosm of like pay attention to why things trend. That could be very beneficial for, you know, doing whatever it is you want to do.
Awesome. You know, it's something I always say. It's like if you want to start doing something, just start. You know, we all talked about being cringe. At the end of the day, we are our biggest critics. If we look at our old stuff, we're gonna say it sucks. That's just the way it is. Because if you continue to do whatever you want to do, you'll get better at it. And that's just something that you can easily promise yourself. I know a lot of people who are saying like, "Well, I'm surprised you do all that stuff for free, man." I'm like, I'm doing it for free because no one's paying. And then the other thing is that I can run this myself, you know, as long as my reviews like hit embargo, maybe I'll get another code. And that's always the way I go about things. Like, for example, with Smashpad right now, like, again, independent website, I don't pay anybody. In fact, I pay like $2,000 to keep it up every year. But at the same time, like, I think it's worth it because it's gotten me opportunities to go to Comic-Con. That's actually where I met Krysta. I met Kid and Krysta in line for Hall H for a Spider-Man panel that Greg Miller hosted. And yeah, it's gotten me into events like Summer Game Fest and GDC. You know, I met pretty much all of you guys at events, and honestly, that's what has really made the site grow. Like being able to, you know, interact with other people who do what you want to do, and at the same time, you can build that foundation. For the longest time, I always like tried to ride on the coattails about of Smashpad being a stepping stone for people like Kevin Venward and Carolyn Pettit, who both went on to GameSpot, and then I think Carolyn's at Kotaku now. Kevin's now at Larian Studios. Like, yeah, like, you know, we all started by doing this stuff for free, and that's how you sharpen your tool. And you know, hopefully you can continue to strive and go for more there. And then on a community management standpoint, you know, be a moderator on someone's Discord. That really matters. I'm sure all of you have heard of Amir Satbot. He is a saint, especially in the LinkedIn community, who has helped a lot of displaced people in video games, you know, find their next opportunity. And, you know, I volunteer with him and I was able to get a GDC badge that way. It's like all of this matters, you know, make connections and whatever it may be. So, yeah, the key thing is, just don't give up and live with the cringe, right? All right. So we do have some time for the individual questions. So we'll just go ahead and fire those off. Let's start with Krysta. Have you noticed any changes in your support system, whether it's family, loved ones, or colleagues, when it came to what you did at Nintendo as compared to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I actually think that now that I'm independent and doing things that is more, I don't have to be beholden to the big corporation anymore. I actually get more support because now I have the real freedom to like authentically talk about things that I want to talk about. I think Stella brought this up a little bit ago about how like, working for like a bigger corporate company, like they want to stifle your voice, unfortunately, because they have a brand that they need to uphold. It's not a bad thing. It's just how it works. Like at Nintendo, I was not allowed to talk about certain things, even though those things really mattered to me. Now I don't have to deal with that anymore. I can just say whatever the heck I want. So that's been great. And I feel like because of that, because there's more like creative freedom, now the community is even more supportive, like because I can have those kinds of relationships with the community now, even the support people around me, they want to see someone that's kind of authentically living their life and speaking their truth, and being able to do that now is a true blessing. And I think yeah, that's been like one of the best things about going from the big corporate thing to the independent thing. There's a lot of unstableness with the independent thing that we've all, talked about, but the ability to be so free in what you can share and what about yourself you can share has been like the best part about all of this. And it has really grown the community connection for me. So I've been just like loving that aspect of it.
Awesome. One of the things that I've always gotten a kick out of, especially as I listen to Kid and Krista now, as opposed to like Nintendo Minute back then, was like, not even really the fact that you can't talk about Xbox or PlayStation, but it was more of like, oh, cool. Like, it's like, hey, Kit, have you played the latest Zelda game? Or he'd be like, no, but I've played The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time 3D, just saying the whole title of something. And I'm like, all right, they're totally being brand representatives. But it's been awesome just seeing the more authentic side of what you guys are doing. I appreciate
Yeah, that's been the best part.
that. And then Stella, how has the content creation grind been treating you ever since the IGN days? From the outside looking in, you've enjoyed a multitude of different opportunities. Would you say you're currently thriving, and how are you?
I think in terms of like where we are with the games industry, thriving quotations, sure. It's like I feel like a lot more companies are turning to freelance work, which does mean that you potentially do have more of a chance of, working with different outlets. So that's kind of nice. You don't need as many prerequisites. But I do think that in terms of content creation, sometimes working for yourself is kind of hard because you want to do all these different things. We all talk about making ideas into tangible things so that they're not just ideas. But that's hard because sometimes you just don't want to sit down and do something. You look at your PC screen and you're just like, I can't do this today. And it's harder when you don't have like a manager or someone, looking over you and being like, hey, we have this deadline here. Sometimes I do wish I had a manager or something, but it is kind of hard to keep track of all the different things. For example, like SGF planning. Oh my God, I'm figuring out all the different assignments, all the different appointments. And I'm like, oh my God, wait, okay, I can't set anything in stone yet until I hear back from this person. And so it's a lot of weird micromanagement for my own self. But yeah, it's tough sometimes because I want to make so much, but I'm just one person. But it is very fun being able to cover topics the way that I want to and choosing the topics that I want to really expand upon. So that's been very fun.
Awesome. Chandler, when you introduced yourself on the AAPI in Gaming Discord, you mentioned your goal was to advocate for AAPI representation while at NextShark. Do you believe you did that well? And what's the difference between Chandler now and Chandler then?
I'd like to think that I did. It's all I did for a year. The difference between me then and now, I was a lot more cynical and I was on a warpath. Everybody was getting it. If I saw something that I felt like was an injustice, I was writing about it. This was, like I said, peak stop AAPI hate. People were getting their hands on AI, so we were getting AI generated images of people against their consent. It was a mess, and so I was a lot more cynical. And I think compared to then, I'm certainly more relaxed, but I still got that fire. If I see a tweet of somebody complaining about a forced DEI or woke in video games, it takes a lot more restraint now to not hit that send button. But I find that I have it, and I just channel that into my writing. So it's still there. It's still there. But I think that I'm using it for good now rather than just getting that poison out onto the internet. I'd like to do more. I certainly feel that now that I've kind of not really restricted myself, but I've focused my energy onto games. I have a lot more time to focus on advocating for representation in this specific medium than I did before when I felt like I was trying to fight the world. Um, and I think that's a good thing. I loved my time at Next Shark. I had a similar issue with uh, kind of what I could and couldn't say, like Krysta did, like you described. And so I appreciate now that I am no longer beholden to maybe wealthy donors or potential donors. Because what if Elon Musk wants to give us $1 million? We have to stop talking about Tesla's exploding. And now I can say all that stuff, and no one's gonna threaten to pull a paycheck. So we're all good there.
Yeah, I always feel awkward when people bring Elon up because I have a Tesla. But yeah, my mom worked there, so that was the reason why. But
Just
yeah,
get that sticker that says you got it before you knew he was
Yeah,
crazy.
like
That's the one that I
crazy,
see
yeah.
everywhere.
I like that sticker.
yeah.
It's so funny.
It's
Plus,
so
like we live
true.
in the base, you kind of expect that. Right?
Yeah.
But no, like it's funny that you talked about being spicy in the comments. Like I try not to get involved, but I did this time, especially with the discourse around mixtape. I am somebody who also gave the game a perfect score despite not being white. I didn't watch too many John Hughes movies. I don't know any of those songs, but I really vibed with it. And I was like, it's okay. The Cassandra's Filipino, I think. And until now, Annapurna hasn't confirmed that, but I'm pretty sure she is. Anyway,
I think if we can't relate to other people's experiences, it's going to be very hard for us to expect them to do the same for us. So I think that's an important thing
there
to
you
do.
go. There's
That's
your
a
quote.
banger line, dude.
I
What?
like
Wow.
that. Dropping the wisdom at the
Oh,
end.
man.
Yeah.
All right. Michael. While the work is different, since you've had different titles over the years, how do you really differentiate the work you did on GameSpot compared to what you do now on IGN?
Oh, damn. That's tough.
Yeah. And if you can relate it to your Asian American background, that'd be great too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I guess the biggest thing that sticks out to me comes with like time and age and experience and maturity. Listen, I'm an old man now. Listen, back in those days, things wasn't the same. No, but I think that the personal experiences I've had and the way the world around us has changed and our perception of it kind of informs the work in subtle ways. It's not always going to manifest in something huge or noticeable. Like my Pragmata review would probably be very similar years ago, whatever. But when there are moments when we talk about certain news stories, how we talk about AI, how we talk about whatever grifters taking headlines or stuff like that, what the conversation is about how games are representing certain characters. I think that, to me, the way I talk and write about those things has evolved. So I will say, though, the difference between GameSpot and IGN is that GameSpot's always been owned by a parent company. We're owned by CBS, then over to Red Ventures, and then to Fandom. But there was something about GameSpot that felt like a much more closer to a grassroots kind of operation because we've always been like pretty small, or in the CBS days, like things just got slimmer and slimmer and slimmer. And then coming out of Rona, like it was a very small team. GameSpot's a very small team now. And it felt like we had ownership over what GameSpot was. And that felt really cool because I was also doing it with like people who are my friends in my personal life, like Tamar Hussein, Lucy James, Jake Decker, Jean-Luc Saipi, like all those people, like those are my homies. And so it felt like we had ownership over it. Going to IGN is like very eye-opening because, and like Stella's familiar with this, is like IGN is a huge operation. It is, that is a brand, like capital B brand, that exists in so many other spaces. Not to say that it's better or worse, it's just different. And so like of the first IGN Live walking in there, I'm like, oh damn, like this is the big leagues. This is different. This is at a scale that I have not worked on before. So I think another thing is that the scale in which IGN operates is very different. And it's really cool to have like both experiences. Like I know what it's like to work for a small team. And then I know what it's like to work for a super small team like at Fanbyte. And then I have the experience of working for a huge operation. And so it's like, wow, this is kind of fascinating. Not to say that I prefer one over the other. It's just like all this context that I have is like putting together, like producing a segment at IGN Live, for example, is such different work than doing something like that for GameSpot, where it's like, I don't know, we'll turn on the cameras, we'll we'll do a mic check, and then we'll go from there. That's like a lot of what we did at GameSpot. Like when I did E3 2019 for GameSpot, there wasn't as much preparation. It's like, hey, you have the interview block from like this time to this time, and these are the people you're interviewing. You figure it out. We get hair, makeup, put the mics on, and then we're live. And it's like all on me. Like I have to figure out what I'm asking, what the segment's going to be about, on the E3 show floor. That was a lot of pressure. And for me at the time, who wasn't as experienced with that, like I could do that now. It's not a big deal. But then I was like, oh snap. There's a lot of people here watching live and through the camera. And I wish I had a little bit more like producer support in that regard. Not to say that like we didn't do a good job with what we had. It was like that's just how we rolled. Like very much flying by the seat of our pants at GameSpot. The difference with IGN is like we have producers, we have crew, we have all of these different stepping stones within the production process to get to that point. It's all like, oh, this is like a TV operation in many ways. It feels like classic media in that way. And so once I like realized that, it was like a very drastic shift in my mentality and how I create things, because like at GameSpot, like I have an idea. I don't know. I don't really need to like run it by anybody. I don't need a producer like by my side to like usher me through it. At GameSpot, I just do it and it happens. But because there are a lot of moving parts at something like an IGN, it's like there are certain things, there's certain methods in which that thing comes to life on the site, whether it's video, article, an event. And that has been very eye-opening. And so learning how to be a part of different types of operations and learning how to adapt to all those things, like that is such a stark difference between GameSpot and IGN. And I know that people have always thought of them as the 1-2 big sites. And as the gap has widened, so too has the method of work. And I don't know, I think that's one of the biggest things. And like to speak to more of like the like identity and AAPI aspect of it, is that I don't know how to necessarily put this, but when you see a gap in perspective, you almost owe it to yourself to be the one to like insert yourself. That like that's not a comfortable thing to do all the time, but it's like, hey, if I see like there's a panel of like all white folks and they're like talking about like Japanese games or something, or like whatever the case might be, or what, it's like, I don't know. I feel like I feel like it would be mutually beneficial if I was a part of this. And again, you fight with yourself with, am I being self-indulgent? Am I being self-serving? And you need to think about it as being mutually beneficial. Like there's an exchange. You're not just doing it for yourself. And as a matter of fact, I think more people should think about how they themselves will benefit from what they do with companies, because they're benefiting from your work regardless. What you get out of it is kind of, that's what's important, or just as important, if not more. So there's that. And also talking about how it's easier to have conversations about identity, whether it's related to games or what's happening in the industry. That is definitely, I felt very comfortable doing at GameSpot because of the nature of the work. At IGN, I'm a little bit more nervous when I do those kinds of things, but it's just as rewarding. And I think that like the people around me are just as supportive. It's just that the scale of which it is visible is a little different, when you have 10 times as many people, as many eyes on something you do, whether it's a video or an article, it's like you're going to be subject to more scrutiny. But I think I've gotten more comfortable with that. It's all good, baby. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's just it's kind of the differences between those two experiences.
Awesome. I think I totally relate what you're saying with relating to finding new forms of comfort. One thing that I always like point out to our peers even is when we try to make our reviews more personal. One of the examples that I give is your review of South of Midnight.
Hell
Just
yeah.
because like the ties to the South, and at the same time like having a product that truly shows real representation from a non-white audience.
Yeah.
Definitely really matters
Yeah.
to that standpoint.
Uh,
But
Yeah.
yeah,
And bouncing off that, one more thing is like
sure.
tying into the other question about how you make yourself stand out and like how do you get to where, like, what would you recommend people do, is like when it comes to identity, like I would tell people like don't be afraid of doing that, inserting your own experience, your perspective into the thing that you do, because that's the thing that is going to make you stand out. And yes, it's going to maybe draw more attention to like the bad actors out there to flood your comments, whatever. But that is also what is going to make yourself distinct. Like, for example, I don't know, this is just off the top of my head. It's like for like Neon in Valorant, who's a Filipino character in Valorant. She's does a really cool moment in Valorant when I was playing at the time. But it's like, you can be like, oh, did you know Neon is X, Y, and Z, the Filipina, and she has all these different references. Like that's like something that only like we could do, and that could go viral with the kind of crowd that you want to cater to. So it's like the more you put yourself into your work, the more you will find the crowd that would accept you. And like that, there would be chuds here and there, like taking shots, whatever, but that's going to bounce off. They're not going to stick around. But the people who are going to stick around are the ones who be like, oh, cool. You're the person who did this and I identify with that. So now I am a fan of yours. And I think I've ran into that where it's like, the more I put myself into the work, the more the people who I want to latch onto my work have latched onto my work. And so scary again, but it's going to pay off in ways that you might not see immediately, but will be rewarding in the long term.
Awesome. Thank you. We do have a little bit more time before we wrap things up and plug ourselves. I want to do something a little bit different. I want to go into Q&A. Granted, we've been doing that the whole time, and there's no audience Q&A. But I want to see if we can be able to ask each other questions about absolutely anything. Think we can try that out?
Sure.
Yeah, now we got to think about questions.
Yeah. I guess I'm curious, Krysta, like going from Nintendo to into independent content creation, like like how do you? I think the way you talk about things is very different, as much as you said, but like do you still default to the way you talked about things before, and like how did you adjust to the freedom of like being able to talk about things without those sort of constraints?
Yeah, that was actually hard, harder than I thought. I really was like itching for the freedom, but once it's like that moment in like that what was that TV show, Kimmy Schmidt, where she like gets out of the dungeon and she's like,
Yeah.
I have no idea what New York City is supposed to be like. That was like me. I was in the dungeon, not to compare Nintendo to like a prison or something, but
Sure, yeah.
it was like very ivory tower, right? And then you get out and you're like, what do I do with all this freedom? And also, it doesn't go unsaid that like a lot of my audience is the former Nintendo audience, and they have to get used to somebody that maybe is a little bit different than what they saw behind the Nintendo brand. So it was kind of an adjustment for everybody, like for me and also for the audience. Like, okay, this is actually she showed a part of herself while she was inside Nintendo. This is actually more of her that she's showing us, and we all need to get used to that. So that's been a bit of a learning curve. Um, Sometimes it resulted in like a lot of hate and some like very weird comments and things like that. But most of the time it was very like rewarding, and people were like, really supportive of getting to know somebody for real, not just behind this like homogenous brand. And that's kind of like what you were saying too, is like put yourself into your work. It's so important to do that. That's what makes you unique. That's what finds you the audience that you want to be in that community. That's what makes real connections, meaningful connection, is when you put yourself out there. And yeah, I think that's the really like rewarding part about it, even though it is pretty scary. All of that comes with some negative things as well. But yeah, it was definitely like a slow process. And sometimes I find myself like reverting back to, it's like, oh yeah, I don't have to do that anymore. I can say what I want.
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
I feel really good. I'm like, oh yeah, I don't have to do that. So that's like a fun reminder sometimes. Or like sometimes when I see Nintendo do something on their like social channels, I was like, oh, that is so them. So glad that I don't have to do that anymore.
Sure. Yeah. yeah.
So that's been a good learning process.
Anybody else?
This may maybe be too far out there, but I've been so curious. I've never been able to ask a streamer this question. So Stella, I have a very specific question. Do
Okay.
you have is there an ideal LED setup? Because every time I see a streamer background, I get so jealous of how well the
Purple is
LEDs were
nice.
placed. The
Like
lighting
this?
is still
Oh.
incredible. Oh, it's the backdrop is not interfering with what's going on here. It just looks it's great.
Thank you. I wouldn't say there's like an ideal way, because here's the thing. I mean, okay, so I have this great setup, and I think some people are like, oh, like what should I get? I need to get the best of this, like the best monitor, the best mic. It's like you don't really need to. The biggest thing with streaming is you really need to be like genuine. Whatever you're doing, you have to enjoy it, because people can immediately tell if you dislike it. Like I could play all the newest releases, but because I don't like some of them, they would absolutely hate watching me hate a game, right? I mean, and a great example is like Queso. He has generated so much income from streaming, but he refuses to upgrade because it keeps working, right? He plays in the dark with like his Yeti microphone that overloads when he yells and stuff. So it's very funny because there's no real ideal setup anymore. But I think it should definitely tailor to your personality. For me, I love plushies and collecting all these things, and I love bright colors. I mean, my hair and all that. So for me, the brighter the better, I guess. So yeah, it's always interesting because I'm like, I do like the whole lighting setup though. I do think that adds like a touch of professionalism, and I have 2 studio lights on too.
Yeah.
Looks so good.
Thank you.
Oh.
I love it.
This is one question I actually want for everyone to chip in on, including you, Danreb, is what other forms of media like have inspired you in your career path, like to get to where we are in games in our various ways? It's like I always, and this is kind of advice, is I always encourage people who like want to get into games media or whatever the case might be, is to have influences elsewhere, like read books, watch movies intently, and like pay attention to other things outside of games, because that will make you a more nuanced and more informed writer, presenter, streamer, whatever the case might be. So like what other forms of media have actually had a huge impact on what you do now?
Oh, definitely reading. I think, yeah, I've grown up reading books all the time, and I kind of fell out of that when I started getting back into games. And then when I had some more free time, I started reading. I was like, oh yeah, this is pretty fun. But it's always great to learn from different people's perspectives, because got really into nonfiction and biographies. Uh, and it just kind of brings you back to the right. We're just like one piece of a whole in the world, right? And I feel like that's a sentiment that's very lost on a lot of people nowadays. And it's so funny because like I never considered myself an activist until I realized I had to stand up for myself. That I was like, oh, okay, I guess I kind of am now. So I think that's also something that I ended up really digging into, like more political research and reading more about current events, because that was something that, you know, as a teen, I would very much cut myself out of like, oh, the news is so sad. But it's like, no, that still affects me and it's not going away.
Yeah.
So
It's
that's
sad, but
definitely
you
something
gotta
that,
know it.
yeah. Like it's, I think that's one of those things that really sets you apart from like, especially after the pandemic where people seem to have lost a lot of empathy for other people. And it's like, oh, if you choose to stay informed, then you're most likely still going to have a sense of empathy for other people. But yeah, anyways, just things that kind of bring you back down to earth and remind you that everyone is human, right?
Mhm.
That's something that I really attach myself to.
Maybe it's too adjacent, but tabletop gaming. I
Oh,
was not
yeah.
into it until 2 or 3 years ago.
Nice.
I finally managed to do the impossible. I got people to sit down for a D&D game, and we have continued. I would suggest that people branch out from D&D once they've gotten into it, but the social aspect of playing a game with your friends, either sitting around a table or if you have to do it through like Discord or something like that, is so invaluable. uh, Especially if you're not somebody who like me, like I personally have kind of fallen off of like the multiplayer online games. But if I can get 2 or 3 friends to sit down and play pretend for 3 hours on the weekend, then I find that getting the creative juices flowing in that scenario has immensely helped my writing. Not just because I can put myself in somebody else's shoes for 3 or 4 hours, but because I can see other people kind of translate their own perspectives in that kind of scenario. And that's I think that's just very similar to reading, gets me in a mindset that's separate from one that video games might.
Mhm.
I think I like seeing other people's AAPI experience through different art forms. So whether it's like somebody that is like creating, you know, graphic novels, showcasing their experience, or making indie games, or writing, or you know, have a podcast. I just like to see how they communicate their experience through these other mediums, because I think it's interesting to see like how they want to share that kind of very specific to them experience, but is relatable to all of us, um, in these different ways. So, you know, I follow a lot of people that do a lot of that, like a lot of sort of, you know, work in the creative fields, as a way to share their experience. And I think that's a really just inspirational thing to see.
Yeah, I think for me, it's reading by default, right? Because they always say that, you know, you can't be a great writer unless you're also a great reader
Facts.
or
Yeah.
whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But at the same time, when it comes to the stuff I read, what I read is mostly like popular stuff or anything that's been on the New York Times bestsellers list. So I wouldn't really say I have anything like unique to add to anything that anybody reads at all. I struggle to form a or think of different forms of media aside from like, you know, some of our peers. Like for example, I used to not really care about content creation or um influencers until like I really got into kind of funnies content, because I feel like they really bridge the gap between you know, journalism and, you know, pop news or whatever it may be. And like I've always enjoyed that. But one thing that I guess would be unique is I've always enjoyed dance. I wouldn't say it's a media or a medium, but I've always enjoyed just watching various forms of dance, especially cultural dance. For over 10 years, I was a Filipino folk dancer in the Bay Area, performing at different, you know, cotillions or parades and whatever it may be. So with that experience, I've seen like various forms. There's Bhangra, there's ballet, there's I forget what it's called, but there's certain cultures use stilts. And
Mhm.
it's always fun seeing those stories, and that's actually what makes me care more about the history, so I can learn why they do these steps and why they do all sorts of those things. And you know, I would never consider myself a good dancer, but I found sort of a small passion teaching it as well, in regards to like the different high schools and colleges in my area, because
Nice.
that is one thing that I do outside of gaming. But yeah,
Yeah.
Anyway,
Sorry, but dance is such a good pull because I hadn't
yeah.
even thought about that. And what was it earlier this year? I saw a lion dance for the first time
Oh
from this
yes,
school of
yes.
kids where they teach lion dance.
Oh, so cool.
I haven't been awestruck like that, and I don't know how long. I was
Nice.
digging through my like every crevice in my car to find dollar bills that I could put in the
Aw.
lion's mouth because I don't carry cash anymore. I was
Yeah.
desperate. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's a great pull.
Yeah, and going off that too, I would also recommend, to tie it all back to AAPI, is like learn about other people's struggles, and because it'll give you the context for your own people's struggles. I think that being Filipino and Spanish colonization, like being like having friends and influences and learning about like Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, um, Indonesia, Malaysia, and like there are games that touch on this too. Like A Space for the Unbound taught me a lot about like, oh, Indonesia is not that much different from the Philippines in the ways that
Great
I
game.
like thought. Or like A Thousand Times This really like made me like rethink what like Chinese American identity is like specifically there. And but extending from that, like something as small as Spider-Man Miles Morales, where you look at the Christmas dinner scene and it's like, wait, this is all like kind of Filipino food, but it's a, you know, it's Noche Buena for Puerto Ricans. Like, damn, we have a lot of similarities. And then from that, it's like, wait, I should probably know more about like countries in the Caribbean, whether it's like Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba. Like, there's like expand the like understanding like those who have similarities to you, because it will also give you like this context that, damn, we out here, not just like us as Filipinos. Like for me, it's like, oh no, we are out here. Everyone has their own unique struggle, but there's a common through line that everybody shares, and like that's the thing that's going to like rally you with each other. And in a world in which you kind of need the numbers, you need the support, you need people around you, in these trying times, I think that will also make you a much smarter person. You could have like much more nuanced conversations with people from other cultures, and that's really important, I think.
Awesome. We're just about out of time. Just want to thank all of you for coming again. Thank you to the viewers that we'll eventually get for this. This was a really awesome time for all of us. For me, it was, I'm kind of sweating. So like, all right, I just need to calm myself down for a bit. But no, this has been really heartwarming, and I wanted to thank you all again. Just wanted to give you guys like the mic one more time. Go ahead and tell us who you are, any closing remarks, and tell us where to find you.
Mine is very short, so I can go first.
Sure.
I'm barely active on social media publicly, so you can, if you want to reach out to me and like actually speak to me, the best place to do that would be in the AAPI and Games Discord. Feel free to just at me. I'm pretty responsive. Um, Otherwise, you can find all of my writing, game related writing, on Bonus Action.
Awesome.
Yeah, you can follow me everywhere on the internet at parallaxstella. I don't really use Twitter as much anymore. I occasionally come on to make sure there are no messages, but mostly I'm on Blue Sky, so you can follow me there. That's my username across everything. And that's also where you can find my podcast, but you can find that on like Spotify, Apple, under Snap Aim Podcast. So yeah.
You could find me and all my stuff at BRAZYAZN at bluesky.social, or like whatever the naming convention is on Blue Sky. Mostly on Blue Sky, not so much these days, but also on Instagram, at Higham Michael on Instagram if you want to follow me there, but also IGN.com. That's where my work goes, whether it's the YouTube channel or the website itself.
And I am at kitandkrysta across all the socials.
Awesome. And once again, for AAPI in Gaming, this was the AAPI in Games Media discussion for AAPI Heritage Month. Thank you for watching. Once again, I am Danreb Victorio, and you can find me on just about every social at Danreb. So yeah, see you guys. All right.